You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm chatting to founder of Fearless Media and The Go House, Ireland's first and only TikTok house. From as early as 14 years old, this week's guest has been making videos. A big fan of YouTube, he had ambitions to make it on the platform and started out sharing information videos on cricket. Fast forward a few years, after having taken a break from content creation, he became fully focused on pursuing a career in videography, and it's safe to say his hard work paid off. Established and settled as founder of a media company, he felt it was time for a new venture, and together with his co-founder came up with the idea to put 10 creators in a house and document the experience. The Go House came to life after just 8 weeks of planning and caused quite the stir across the country. Sharing his journey thus far, here's what it's like to be Thomas Arnold. I like to start by letting people get to know you a bit more about your background and, how you work. So if you wouldn't mind just speaking a bit about where your initial interest in media came from, what your interests were when you were growing up, and, why you wanted to get involved with online content creation.
Yeah, so when I was 14, I was on holidays with my parents in France, and I was like a mad consumer of YouTube. Had my iPod Touch and I was watching all my favorite YouTubers literally probably 10 hours a day, because like I didn't have much to do with my sisters because they preferred to just like do their makeup and stuff, and I was into sports and just watching YouTube, so I had to occupy my time a lot. So I remember thinking, oh, it'd be funny to do like a comedy video. So when I came home from holidays, I got my dad's camera and I made what I thought was a funny video. It was most definitely not funny whatsoever. And I edited it together on my dad's old laptop, and I showed it to him and I said, Dad, I really want to put this on YouTube, just because I wanted to do it, And he said, you absolutely cannot do that. That looks so bad. And that's when I was like 13. And I said, I was very dejected after that. But then the next day he came back to me and he said, I played cricket at the time. That used to occupy my summer. And he said, if you make cricket videos, because they're educational and they actually provide some form of value, then I'd allow you to post them. So I started Googling online what people asked for in cricket, and then I'd make cricket videos. And I used to post them every 2 weeks on my dad's laptop. And that was sort of how I got started making YouTube videos. And I just wanted to do it, really. There was no grand plan or anything. I just really enjoyed it. And that's sort of where I started.
And as we were talking about just before, Ireland is kind of a funny one for this world in general, like media, content creation. If you ever want to do anything a little bit outside the box, sometimes you're going to get very mixed reactions. And you were, 14, 15, which I suppose for a guy in school must have been pretty hard to put out that content at some points. Did you get a negative reaction, or was it positive, or did people not take any interest?
To be honest, it obviously depends on what school you went to, but like my class was very supportive, but a lot of the time they didn't really say anything to my face, so I didn't really know what they were saying. And I sort of just ran with it for about a year. It only really got to me when during the winter time there used to be this thing where they'd pick a couple of players from all the cricket clubs around Dublin, and there was these sort of Leinster winter squad trainings. So they just put together like all the players in one place. And I felt intimidated by that atmosphere anyway, because I was from this obscure club in North Dublin, and the majority of the cliques were all South Dublin, like powerful clubs who were very good at cricket. And I just kept getting slagged behind my back, and it really started to get at me. And after that winter, I was like, you know what, I don't think it's worth it anymore. Like, I don't know if I really know what I'm talking about, because I was just Googling stuff and just posting it. I didn't have any credentials or qualifications to do with cricket. So I sort of stopped, and that was when I was in third year. So I rationalized that I was just going to do my junior cert. And basically I dabbled in and out of videos. So I used to do, like, when we went on trips, I made some GoPro videos, and I do some in my own time, but I was definitely afraid to do them. But there was a guy in my class, Alex Quinn, who he started a production company when he was 16 called Bold Studios. And Alex started that at the end of third year. Then in fourth year, he just stopped coming into class. And I remember texting him and being like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm making videos. And he came in one day and he had made this amazing video for Westwood gyms. And basically Alex started to run his own business and became like very successful at it very quickly. And he was doing like really cool shoots, and I actually couldn't believe what he was doing. And by the time I was 18 and I'd done my Leaving Cert and was first going into college, I definitely felt this profound frustration that I wasn't doing something that I knew I could do. Like I knew I could do a YouTube channel, and I was just so frustrated that I hadn't had the balls to actually do it. So when I went to DCU, I just started making content again, and that was March 2016. And that's when I'd say I had my rebirth in a way, where I actually started putting stuff out consistently, and it's sort of been that way ever since.
And behind all of this, was there, I suppose, a goal towards becoming, you know, a videographer in the future or an entrepreneur? Or for you, what was, I guess, want for a better word, like the point behind wanting to be successful on YouTube?
Yeah, I definitely didn't have a grand plan or anything. I've always had a want to be the best at whatever I do. And when it came to certain things that I used to do, like cricket, or I used to do table tennis, I used to do athletics, I used to do like soccer, that I found with all of them that I reached a certain point and I didn't feel like I could go any further. And that was because it's very applicable for stuff like sport. The people who become the best at sports generally started when they were very young. They got very good coaching. They had some form of genetic background that helped them. And I felt like I could be okay at, say, cricket, but I could never reach more than, say, the first team in my club. And that really wasn't where my aspirations were. Whereas when it came to videos, I was like, well, I can make as many videos as I want, so I can do as much practice as I want. I have access through the internet to the best creators in the world, so I can see what they're doing. And I felt like I was okay at it, you know, good enough to be very good at it. So when I started making stuff again, I didn't have an end goal, but what basically happened was I started making YouTube videos. Then a cafe paid me to do a video. And then I thought, oh, what if more people wanted to pay me? And then the cafe passed me on to a boxing camp, and the boxing camp then had an event that month. And then that led to something else. So the videography piece just came from referrals, basically. And I did used to work other jobs. Like I used to work in a garden center, and I used to sell alarms door to door. And then when the freelance money from videography was more than what I was making part-time, I was like, oh, I'll just leave that and do videography. And I didn't really think of it as my own business probably till I hit third year of my degree in UCD, because at that point I was making enough money to like get nice shoes and to like potentially rent. And then I thought, oh, this is actually a thing. Like I'm actually okay at making money at this and stuff. So yeah.
And so obviously you have your company, Fearless Media, which I suppose once you realized you could make money from it, you decided to compile it into a company. Is that right? Is that kind of how that came about?
Like basically I was like a one-man band when it came to videos. So you hired Thomas Arnold. So the only reason why I changed to Fearless Media was that I was getting to a point where I didn't have enough time to do all the stuff myself. So I wanted to hire like an editor to help me with workflow. And I also wanted a situation where if somebody came to me and I couldn't do it, that I'd say, look, I have people who I work with who could shoot it for you or who could help with the editing. And I'd still be client facing. So I'd still deal with like the emails and putting together the pitches and making sure that they were happy with their product. But I just wanted to remove myself a little bit so I could expand it a bit more. So that was the only reason why I changed it to that. And it's definitely been very helpful because people understand. Like, no, I think what was interesting was that when I was in second and third year and I was doing everything, like I was the emails, the shooting, the edit, like I was absolutely everything. The bit that held me back in a way was, oh, well, people hire me for me. Like that's what I thought. But at the end of the day, they do hire you for a bit of yourself, but they also hire you because it's the product that you can provide for them. Like, for example, it would be ridiculous for you to start a Facebook account and you want Mark Zuckerberg to help you with the ads. Like everybody would think you're fucking crazy. But for some reason, when you're like a one-man band, you get caught up thinking it needs to be you the whole time. So it's definitely helps getting more people in. And like ultimately, Lucy, like I'm not amazing at everything. Like there's better shooters out there than me. That's why I hire them. I'm a pretty good editor, but there's better editors than me as well. So I think when you have a bit of humility and tell yourself that there are people out there who can do better than you, then you can make the overall product a lot better. And that means the client's going to get a better product, and that makes everybody happier.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I've spoke to other people like around our age, who have started their own businesses or gone out on their own. And they've all mentioned that, part of the difficulty with it is that imposter syndrome of feeling like you don't always know what you're doing, or, when you're dealing with people a lot older than you, you might feel out of your depth. So did you ever experience any of those moments? I guess especially because whilst you're self-taught and you've done a really amazing job of doing that, but maybe because you didn't have the piece of paper behind you saying like, yes, I can do videography, or that kind of way, did you ever feel out of your depth in starting this and in approaching people to hire you?
Yeah, like I feel out of my depth every day, to be honest. Like, because I'm always trying to push towards something that more than what I've done before. Like I was thinking about this the other night. If there was ever a point at which I felt like I knew everything, then I'm dead in the water, because you're not opening yourself to like other learnings or other opportunities. I actually feel like that all the time. I still feel like it now. Like it's just the quality of the problems is different. So when I was 18, charging say €150 for something felt like I was way out of my depth. And now like charging 10 grand for a couple months of like retainer work is fine. But other stuff I find difficult now. Like other stuff, say like if I was pitching for investments, like I find that difficult now because it's just something I haven't done before. So I think for anybody who's doing form of entrepreneurial ventures, you're always going to feel like that, because you're pushing the boundaries of what you think you can do.
And how do you deal with that? How do you get over it?
Like you just do it, I guess. Like I probably have a degree of anxiety or like overthinking every week, where I'm maybe lying there at night time thinking, like say you have this big important meeting the next day. Like I have an important meeting tomorrow at 1, and I was there last night being like, oh my God, what am I going to say at that? But in reality, like all these things are they're just moments in time. Like a lot of the anxiety comes from you just thinking about the past and the future, not to go all zen in it. But at the end of the day, like this conversation is just a moment in time. It's actually not that scary. Like I can build it up in my head and think, oh my God, Lucy's had so many cool guests on in the past, and what am I going to say to her? When in reality, you just sort of deal with where you are in the moment and be your authentic self. And it's in the process of speaking that you often end up drawing from your previous experiences anyway. So just doing it, I think is it, isn't it? Because what else can you do? Like when you remove, another way of thinking about it is that thought is the enemy of a lot of things, really. When you can remove thoughts, you can prevent yourself from fucking yourself up, because it's the thinking that messes you up in everything. When you're like talking to a girl who you're scared to talk to, or when you're pitching an investor, or when you're speaking to someone in the house and they're bringing up like a very personal issue with them. You just got to be there in the moments.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think you've raised some really important points there, that it's what is that, like mind over matter. And once you get past your own thoughts, you can pretty much do anything. As you guys have proven with your new venture, the Go House. I still want to call it the Goat House, but it's the Go House. I know. So yeah.
If you say it very quickly, it sounds like the Goat House. Go House.
Yeah. So can you just take me back to day one of this whole thing? Where did the idea come from? And then, I guess we'll pick into more about how you brought it to life.
Yeah, so during quarantine, myself and my co-founder Jake, we both rent an office on Bagot Street. And at the time, we weren't going in because of, obviously, it was at that time, do you remember when you thought everybody and your granny's goldfish was going to die from COVID? So we were all staying in our houses all the time. And we were doing these remote podcasts, and we kept WhatsApping each other every day of like, we'd send each other a Tim Ferriss podcast, and then I'd send him a Mark Zuckerberg quote. And then we were just trying to figure out what our next thing was. Or our initial intention was how we were going to blow up our YouTube channels. And randomly, Jake was on a run one morning and he sent me a voice message and he said, I know this is absolutely crazy, but I have this secret idea and I can tell nobody about it but you. Can I call you? And then he rang me and he goes, I think we should start a TikTok house. Am I absolutely crazy about saying that? And people had come to me before with the idea of a TikTok house. Like, it's not uncommon for someone to say, let's rent an Airbnb for a weekend and get some creators together. But Jake was saying, no, we're going to rent the best gaff that we can in Ireland. We're going to get the best creators in the country together, and we're going to sort of emulate the hype house in a way. And I remember thinking, there's no logical reason why we shouldn't do this. Like, I couldn't think of a downside other than losing a lot of money. And if I lost a lot of money, I could always just file it as a tax loss for next year, and I could just move back in with my parents. And there was nothing else going on. And this was July, and this is July 9th, and Jake said, we need to start this September 1st. And I was, in my head, I was like, good luck to us starting this by September 1st. Like, how in God's name are we going to do that? And then we just started getting the ball rolling. Like, we just started looking up houses. We started contacting real estate agents. We pulled together all the money we had, and we started voice messaging influencers. And like, I had connections in the influencer space. Jake had connections in the sort of more commercial side of it. And we both were just trying out the different houses. And yeah, I know it's very cliche, but we just worked 18-hour days till September 1st. Like, it just took so much longer than what we thought. Mainly on sort of the funding side, because me and Jake put up the money, but we needed a bit of help as well. And also just like the influencers and the contracts, and it just took ages. But it took ages, but it also took no time at all, because we did it in 8 weeks, and we're here now, and we've been in the house for 4 weeks. So it just shows you that when you have a bit of fire under your ass, you can do stuff a lot quicker than you actually think. And it's been crazy. Like, it's been basically 3 months now since the inception of the idea.
Yeah, that's mad. When you say stuff like, oh, it took so long. I mean, for me sitting on this side, I'm like, it literally popped up out of nowhere in like a week. It seems like. But then I guess if no one has heard of the concept of creator houses, or they don't know what the hype house is, from a business perspective, what will a content house do for you guys who, whilst you are creators, you're essentially like not the creators in the house? Why did you want to set this up for you two individually?
Yeah, like, a few reasons. One, we wanted something cool to work on. So like, social media content creation is fun, but it can be a little bit boring at times. We wanted to try something risky. Like, I'm a very risk orientated person, so I really enjoy like roller coasters or like electric skateboards and like all those things. And like, doing something like this where I could lose a lot of money gets me very excited, or make a lot as well. And we wanted to get a bit of a profile in Ireland about two guys who knew what they were doing in the social media space. And we just needed a vehicle to sort of go through that, if that makes sense. And everybody in the house is all sharing a bit of a following, sharing collaboration, sharing knowledge of how to actually make content that does well. So there's a lot of benefits for us, and there's a lot of benefits for the influencers as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so obviously you're the only TikTok house or content creator house in Ireland at the moment. But I guess in terms of like an international scale, you mentioned the Hype House, and I saw, a few popping up in the UK. I don't know if you've seen the Wave House. Are you looking to compete on an international scale with other houses, or, are you content with being in the Irish market, or what are the future plans for this?
Yeah, great question. Like, me and Jake have definitely thought about it. In terms of like the business model of a house, it's very good. If anything, we've picked like the worst market in the world to start in, because the prices in Ireland here for renting houses is outrageous for the size of the country. Like, the Jet House, if you go to Spain and you go into Airbnb and you put in a long-term letting date, so if you put it in for 4 weeks, you'll get automatically a 30% discount. You could rent a villa in Spain for like $3,000 a month. Yeah. And if you spread that across 10 influencers and they all just pay 300 quid each, like, that's an absolute no-brainer. And that's what I think the Jet House has done. Mm-hmm. They're all just mates. And the main reason why is because they've just made a TikTok, but their IG and YouTube is non-existent. Yeah. Whereas the Wave House, if you go into their bio, it says powered by Yolk. And Yolk is not an egg. It's actually a business over in the UK that is like an influencer network. Okay. And their whole business model is like getting influencers to sign up on their marketplace, and then they connect the influencers with brands. So I think the Wave House is being funded by Yoke. But long story short, yes, I think this is going to happen. I think TikTok houses are going to go everywhere, and me and Jake are working towards potentially like expanding, but it's only in our infancy stages at the moment. And like cash is where it's at. If you have the cash, you can do it, you know. So I think what me and Jake bring is that it's not so simple as to say you can just have the cash and set up the house, because we found anyway that the hard part is managing the house and like keeping everybody happy and everything. You can't just throw money at this and it's going to work. So it's in the plans. Hopefully we can hop on another podcast soon when those plans have been executed.
Yeah, definitely. When you've got like helicopters flying over the house and things like that. Yeah, no, I thought the Wave House was interesting though, because I would follow some of them on YouTube more than TikTok. So it's kind of taking like it's venturing off into the other mediums rather than just being a TikTok house. But yeah, no, I'm sure that you guys can compete. You've already got pretty much like in the first week, you had the whole country watching you guys, which I thought was absolutely crazy. I know potentially for some negative reasons, which mustn't have been fun for you guys to go through, but even still, the fact that you could garner that much attention in such a short space of time is really impressive. So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are, what your tips are on cutting through that noise and making people care about what you're doing.
So I think in Ireland, because it's such a small market and it's so slow technologically, a TikTok house was always going to make big news. But I think ultimately what creates free media exposure, like we got something like 12 Google News articles, 18, what was it, like 8 like radio interviews, a TV appearance. Like we got a load of free press. We didn't email a single newspaper. Like it all came to us. It was all inbound. It's because the story is so good. You know, it's 10 influencers in a gaff. How did they pay for the gaff? Then what are they doing? They just dance. TikTok. What is a TikTok? Like it has so much questions to it and so many angles that you'd just be so interested. And then you'd be like, geez, I might as well Google them. Where are they? Oh, I can't find them. Oh no, they're on Instagram. Right. And who's that girl? You know, there's just so many angles that make it interesting. So I think for anybody, focus on making a cool story, because stories travel very quickly. And think about how your mum would talk about it on a Sunday afternoon to your dads. That's how I sort of think about it.
So then I guess leading on from that, what does a day in the life of the Go House look like?
Yeah, so it was fairly mental that first week, but we've put more structure around it. So every morning, Monday to Friday, we have a 10 a.m. meeting, which is everybody just brings up anything from the day before. We map out like a plan for the week. And that was a very funny voice break. And then we just see if there's any like viral things we want to do, or if there's any things like we need to get in the house. Then we generally do like a collaboration session before lunch where we pair up people and they make content together. And then in the afternoon, we'll generally do a group activity. So it might be in the house, or we might go to say Stephen's Green or Dunleary or something, and we bring the photographers out, we get pictures, we get videos. And in the evening times, they're definitely more loose, but we have dinner at like 7. And sometimes we have these master classes where we get one of the creators to teach the other creators how they've succeeded and stuff. So that's sort of how much structure we've put around it at the moment. We could probably add in more stuff just to make it better for people, but that's generally what a day in the life would look like.
Sounds very productive, which I feel like not a lot of people would know, because they think, you know, I don't know, you guys just sit around and kind of do nothing in your big house, but you obviously like have made it work really well for you guys. And then just for you, in general, do you ever get tired of documenting your life, or, you know, having the pressure to post on Instagram so that you can grow, or get involved in TikTok, or, you know, all of those things? Do you ever just get tired of it and want to just say like, I just want to live today?
Yeah, like I enjoy posting content. If I didn't, I wouldn't. I think, yeah, I am a very like all in type of personality. So I'd either be all into social media, or I'd be off in South America with pygmy tribes in like a beat up old car and have no cellular mobile device whatsoever. So I'm a very like, that's the type of person I am. But yeah, if there are times like people get a very skewed view of your life. You know, you only choose to share the things you want to share, and there's obviously things that I don't share. I I put out a YouTube video ages ago saying I don't drink. This is when I was 19, but like I do have a drink the odd time now. I don't document that because I don't want to. I never put up personal relationships, like intimate personal relationships. There's parts of my life that I choose to hide, and there's parts of my life that I choose to put out there. So if I'm tired of it, I just take a break for a bit. But I generally always want to come back and make something. So I think in my heart, I definitely am a creator at the end of the day.
And so do you think that Ireland will ever get to a place where people wouldn't bat an eyelid if you're walking down the street talking to a camera? Do you think we'll ever have that respect for creators and for people in media that places in the world seem to have?
I'm not sure. I definitely know that Ireland is a bit of a laggard when it comes to tech, and there's a lot more positivity if you were to go over to somewhere like America. If you're to start like new ventures and stuff, they're way more gung-ho about, yeah, you go start something, or you go raise some money, or you go do that. I think there's a lot of older people, because I deal with a lot of older people in my video business, and they'd say jokes about privacy in China and how, geez, I wouldn't want the Chinese, controlling my phone. But look, like, we're controlled by our phones as well. Like, Facebook has all our data already. Like, privacy isn't really a thing. We're just very caught up with it in Europe, I think. And I do envisage a world where we will become more accepting in a way, because although we are physically an island, we're not an island anymore on a global scale, because we're connected through the phone to other countries. So our thoughts about how we, our thoughts around just living in our small town are challenged every day now, because you see Irish people moved abroad, and you see UK people who've expanded somewhere else. And I think over time our minds could definitely change, but I've no idea when that's going to be. But I think it's people like yourself and myself who are trying stuff. Ultimately, that becomes like the mind shift, and maybe it becomes a point where it's weird for you not to have a podcast because everybody has one. So potentially, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a hard one. I was just interested to know your take on it, because obviously you've experienced, the negative side of it and the backlash, but then also what can come out of taking that risk too. So it's interesting. And then I just have one more question for you, and I'm going to let you get on with your Sunday afternoon. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through everything you've been through already in your career and then life in general, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give that 10-year-old self moving forward?
What was I when I was 10? I was in fourth class. I had a major crush on this girl in my class. I was playing football out in Lusk. I was very good at maths, and I was I think I was just starting watching YouTube videos. I think I'd say to him that, like, you just got to really, really trust your gut in one way, and also you have to really just go after what you think is cool and right, and what you think is exciting, and don't get caught up in what everybody else is doing. I think I've been pretty measured the entire time. I think if I was to say anything, it would potentially just to be more aggressive with whatever I was going after. Just like, why couldn't I have done this house a year ago? That's how I'm always thinking. Like, if I wanted to make 5 houses in Europe, why haven't I done that already? You can probably, like, if you ask yourself the question, you can probably do stuff so much faster than you think. Like, Peter Thiel has that quote, how can you reach your 10-year goal in 6 months? Like, that just completely fucks with your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, if I don't know what you're, like, say you had a goal of like 1 million podcast downloads, how could you squeeze that 10 year into 6 months? The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, we have like the same brain, like we have the same limbs, we have the same resources, we have the same phone. Like, what is the difference between us? Like, it's probably nothing more than how we think and what we do.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. It's been so interesting picking your brain for a bit. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Lucy.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. To find out more about Thomas and his work to date, visit the links in the show notes. I'll be back next week with more inspiring stories, but for now this has been What It's Like with Luce.